Welcome to Shadow Case Files, where the safest homes hide the darkest secrets, and the truth waits silently behind perfect smiles. Tonight's story will make you question how well you really know the person living next door. The first sign that something was wrong was not a scream. It was silence. On a cool Tuesday night in Maple Grove, Sarah Mills left her house for her usual evening jog. She wore black leggings, a gray hoodie, and wireless earbuds. She texted her sister, back in 30. She was never seen again. By morning, her phone went straight to voicemail. Maple Grove was the kind of suburb where doors were left unlocked and neighbors borrowed sugar without asking. Tree-lined streets, trimmed lawns, porch lights glowing softly after sunset. It felt safe, predictable, almost too perfect. And at the center of that perfection stood Daniel Harper. Daniel was the father every kid admired and every parent trusted. He coached Little League with patience, cheered the loudest at school plays, and always volunteered first at community events. He worked as an accountant in Columbus and drove home every evening at exactly 6:15 p.m. His life ran on schedule. When Sarah was reported missing, Daniel joined the search immediately. He printed flyers, organized volunteers, and brought hot coffee to the worried family gathered in their living room. He stood beside Sarah's mother as she cried and promised they would find her. People noticed how calm he was, how steady. But calm can mean many things. Weeks passed. There were no signs of struggle on Sarah's jogging path, no witnesses, no ransom calls. It was as if she had stepped off the edge of the world. Then another woman vanished. This time it was Rachel Dunn, a nurse who lived 3 streets away from Daniel. She disappeared after returning from a late shift. Again, no noise. No forced entry, no clues. Fear began to creep into Maple Grove like a slow fog. Late at night, porch lights stayed on longer. Fathers waited outside for their daughters. Mothers checked locks twice. And through it all, Daniel Harper remained the steady presence everyone leaned on. He reassured neighbors. He told them it was probably someone passing through town, someone temporary. But if that were true, why did both women disappear on a Tuesday night? And why did Daniel always work late on Tuesdays? The third disappearance changed everything. It happened on another Tuesday. When 31-year-old Megan Clark failed to pick up her son from daycare, panic spread faster than before. This was no longer coincidence. 3 women, same neighborhood, same quiet vanishing. And once again, it was a Tuesday night. Detective Laura Bennett stared at the calendar pinned to her office wall. 3 red circles, 3 dates, 1 pattern. Patterns meant intention. She began rebuilding each woman's final hours piece by piece. Phone records, credit card activity, security footage from nearby streets. There were no signs of forced entry in any case. No broken windows, no screams reported. Whoever was responsible had not needed to break in. The women had opened the door willingly. That detail disturbed her the most. When Bennett examined work schedules of local residents, one name kept aligning with the timeline: Daniel Harper.
On all 3 Tuesdays, he had reported working late at his accounting firm in Columbus. At first, it meant nothing. Many professionals worked overtime. But something felt off. Bennett called the firm directly. The office manager hesitated before answering. "Late audits?" she repeated. "No, we don't schedule audits on Tuesdays, and Daniel hasn't stayed late in weeks." The air in Bennett's office grew heavy. Traffic camera footage along Route 33 revealed more. Daniel's silver SUV had been captured heading away from Columbus on the same nights he claimed to be working late. The timestamps were precise: 8:12 p.m., 8:17 p.m., 8:09 p.m. Right within the window when each woman disappeared. Still, suspicion is not proof. Bennett watched hours of footage showing Daniel in the community, smiling, helping, comforting grieving families. His body language was steady, controlled, almost practiced. Was it possible that the most dependable man in Maple Grove was living a secret life? Or was someone manipulating the evidence to frame him? As Bennett pinned Daniel's photograph next to the red circles on her wall, a cold realization settled in. If he was innocent, the real predator was still out there. But if he wasn't, then the monster had been standing in the middle of every search party all along.
The drill cut through the silence first. Officers stood in Daniel Harper's basement, surrounded by neatly stacked plastic bins and labeled holiday decorations. Everything looked ordinary, too ordinary. But Detective Bennett couldn't ignore the faint, hollow echo when one officer knocked against the back wall. It didn't sound solid. With a warrant in hand, they began removing the shelves. Behind them was fresh drywall, cleaner than the rest of the basement, slightly lighter in color. Someone had built it recently. When the drill pierced through, a cold draft slipped out from the opening. Behind the false wall was a narrow, hidden room. The air inside felt heavy, trapped. A single metal chair sat bolted to the floor. There were restraints attached to its arms. A small table stood nearby, holding items placed with disturbing care. A silver necklace, a hospital ID badge, a charm bracelet. Detective Bennett recognized them immediately. They belonged to the missing women. The room was not messy. It was controlled, organized, designed. There were no wild signs of rage, no chaos. Whoever built this space had planned it carefully, measuring every inch. Soundproof insulation lined the inner walls. The light switch was positioned outside the room, not inside. Control. That word kept echoing in Bennett's mind. Forensic teams moved slowly, photographing every surface. Under ultraviolet light, faint stains appeared on the concrete floor, cleaned but not erased. Upstairs, Daniel's home still smelled of laundry detergent and fresh coffee. Family photos lined the staircase wall, birthdays, vacations, school awards. Smiling faces, frozen in time. A life that looked warm and loving. Down here, behind a wall no one knew existed, was something else entirely. When officers placed Daniel under arrest later that afternoon, neighbors watched from their driveways in disbelief. Daniel didn't fight, he didn't shout, he simply asked if someone could call his wife. As he was led to the patrol car, his expression remained calm, almost thoughtful. But one question remained unanswered. If this room had been used, where were the bodies? Daniel Harper smiled during his interrogation. Not a nervous smile, not a broken one. It was calm, controlled, almost polite. As detectives placed photographs of the hidden room in front of him, he adjusted his posture and folded his hands neatly on the table. "I don't know how those got there," he said softly. Hours passed. The room grew stale, heavy with tension. Detective Bennett watched him closely. No shaking hands, no rising voice. Daniel answered every question with measured patience, as if he were explaining tax returns to a client. But evidence does not depend on emotion. Forensic teams had already found traces of blood inside his SUV. The stains were microscopic, buried deep in the fabric despite professional cleaning. The DNA matched one of the missing women. When confronted, Daniel paused, but only briefly. "I give people rides sometimes. I try to help." Help. That word followed investigators back to Daniel's digital records. They discovered he had volunteered for years at a late-night crisis hotline. The calls were confidential, meant for people who felt alone, anxious, or afraid. Daniel had access to their names, their struggles, their vulnerabilities. Phone logs revealed something chilling. Several missing women had contacted that hotline in the weeks before they vanished. Daniel had spoken to them. He had presented himself as a steady voice in the dark, a man who understood, a man who listened without judgment. Over time, conversations shifted from phone calls to private meetings, coffee shops, church parking lots, safe spaces. There were no signs of forced entry because he never needed to force anything. They trusted him. Investigators mapped his movements against call records. The timing aligned with terrifying precision. Late Tuesday calls, followed by disappearances within hours. But there was one detail that unsettled Detective Bennett the most. Months before Sarah Mills vanished, a woman named Claire Thompson had filed a quiet police report. She claimed a man from a community support group offered her a ride home. She noticed zip ties in his glove compartment and felt a sudden wave of fear. She asked him to stop the car and ran. At the time, she couldn't identify him clearly. Until now. When shown Daniel's photograph, Claire didn't hesitate. "That's him," she whispered. The calm man across the interrogation table was no longer just a suspect. He was something far darker. But as investigators closed in, one haunting question remained. How many more had trusted him before someone finally survived to tell the story? The courtroom was silent when the verdict was read. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning as the jury foreman stood, hands trembling slightly. Daniel Harper sat at the defense table in a neatly pressed suit, his posture straight, his face unreadable. He looked less like a man accused of horrific crimes and more like a father waiting for a school meeting to begin. Guilty. The word landed like a hammer. Gasps filled the room. Some people cried. Others simply stared at Daniel as if waiting for him to finally show emotion. But he didn't. He blinked once, slowly, then looked down at his folded hands. During the trial, the prosecution laid out the story piece by piece. The hidden room behind the basement wall, the carefully collected jewelry, the blood traces in his vehicle, the crisis hotline calls that turned into private meetings, and Claire Thompson's steady voice as she pointed to him and said, "That's the man who tried to trap me." The defense tried to paint him as misunderstood, a devoted husband, a stressed accountant, a man overwhelmed with responsibility. They showed photos of birthday parties and Little League games. They played videos of him laughing with his children. But the evidence told a darker story. When it was time for sentencing, Daniel was finally asked if he wished to speak. For the first time, he lifted his eyes and scanned the courtroom. His wife sat in the front row, pale and distant. His daughter held her mother's hand tightly. "I never felt seen, not really. This made me feel powerful." The simplicity of his words chilled the room. No apology, no visible regret, just power. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As deputies led him away in handcuffs, he did not look back at his family. The doors closed behind him with a heavy metallic thud. But even after the trial ended, one truth continued to haunt Maple Grove. The bodies were never found. Somewhere beyond the neat lawns and quiet streets, secrets still lay buried, and the most disturbing question of all remained. Was everything truly uncovered, or was there still something Daniel Harper chose to keep hidden forever?
If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't let the mystery end here. Like, subscribe, and share to join the investigation, and press the bell icon so you never miss the next case.